Welcome to the Peer Review Podcast, Creativity and Fulfillment in Academia.
I'm Sarah Bunin-Benor.
And I'm Mira Sukharov.
Each episode brings us in conversation with fellow scholars and other experts on living a good academic life.
Today, we'll be tapping into the wisdom of Eviatar Zerubavel.
Eviatar is Board of Governors and Distinguished Professor of Sociology Emeritus at Rutgers University. He's the author of 14 books, including Hidden Rhythms, The 7-Day Circle, and his most recent book, Don't Take It Personally, Personalness and Impersonality in Social Life. Eviatar is also the author of an influential book about academic writing, The Clockwork Muse, a practical guide to writing theses, dissertations, and books. Eviatar Zerubavel, welcome to Peer Review.
Thank you, my pleasure.
So most of our conversation today is going to focus on that book, The Clockwork Muse. But first, please tell us about your scholarship.
My scholarship started in the mid-70s. When I went to graduate school in 72, I studied with Erving Goffman, and I thought that I'm going to go in the direction of social interaction. I was very soon caught by the concept of time, and which was almost unexplored in sociology. So I decided to develop a sociology of time. But most of my work in the 1990s and 2000s and 2010s has been on cognitive sociology, sociology of the way we process things in our minds. And I call it cognitive sociology, despite the fact that for many people the term cognitive seems to imply psychology or neuropsychology. I'm interested in the social dimension of remembering, of attending, of classifying. Now I'm working on a book called Small Steps, Giant Leaps, tribute to Neil Armstrong. I want to explain how small steps can become giant leaps. So it's really on the social phenomenology of distance.
Well, let's turn now to the book. Can you tell us about The Clockwork Muse? What is the method for getting the writing done?
The title is supposed to be a little provocative intellectually. Muse is not supposed to run by clockwork. I'm starting the book by saying that we have this romantic idea of writing, that it's something that you're inspired to do, but if you just waited for the times that you feel inspired, you may be able to finish maybe an article, but you never get to write a book. So I try to explain that it takes discipline that comes in the form of schedules and timetables. It's not about how to be more efficient, more productive, but how to actually complete tasks. And so when you mentioned that I've completed 14 books, I'm actually getting just months from completing the 15th. It's not because I'm a fast writer. Actually, the last 9 years now, I've been slowed down even more by Parkinson's disease. So it's not about speed, it's about discipline. I tell the story of Aesop's fable on the tortoise and the hare. My hero is really the turtle. It's not about being slow deliberately, even though what I have now medically, it's a disease that slows you down, but about the fact that you complete tasks. And the question is how to be creative and yet arrange your writing in timetables and schedules that allow you to systematically make progress. So whether it takes you 3 years or 13 years to finish a book, the point is finish it. So So it's really about a much more measured way of writing than the more manic style of sitting for 2 months and going 24 hours a day, not sleeping. Because the book, also a goal of trying to fit the writing into the rest of your life, or the rest of your life into your writing. The point is to have an organic relationship between the two. I don't believe in the writer's block. It's about being systematic. Philip Roth said it very simply. Every day I write 3 pages. And at the end of several years, 3 years or so, I had a book. And I add to this 2 things. First, for me, it's very often about 1 page a day, sometimes 1 paragraph a day, but it's about doing a lot of drafts. So also use the metaphor of long distance runners. When you run a marathon, how can you survive it? You have to have benchmarks along the way that tell you where you are in the process. So you have to have timetables for long-term projects.
So I'll tell you some of my favorite points from the book, my favorite takeaways. One is to start by setting priorities. What are the things that you find more meaningful or that you find more important for you to do? And then prioritize those priorities. And then another thing is find a time that works best for your writing during the day. For some people, that might be first thing in the morning. For some people, it might be late at night or in the middle of the afternoon. And then the third thing that I loved is the A time and B time, that as academics, we all have tasks that we need to do that are much more thought intensive and tasks that are less thought intensive. And the more thought intensive tasks are the ones we should do at the time that we're most fresh and able to do that work. And so for me, the A time includes not only the writing, but also the reading. If I'm trying to read someone else's scholarship during my B time, it won't work as well. I have to do that when my mind is in good shape. Mira, what are some things about the book that you particularly appreciated?
Well, definitely working consistently a little bit each day. At times, I've been part of a group of academics. They call themselves the 400 words per day club. So they do it by number of words rather than by time.
I think that Graham Greene also had a maximum of 300 or 400 words a day.
Yeah, and it helps because time can be intimidating. But in any event, the spirit of what you're saying, whether it's by time or by words, it's the consistency each day.
I talk about this as the piggy bank model, that you put pennies and nickels that you don't even notice. And after several years, you open it and suddenly you have a lot of money. How a lot of nothings, when you add them together, become something.
Yeah, I love it. You're married to another academic. So you inevitably watch each other's work habits. Do you work in the same way? Do you have different philosophies of how you get your pages out?
Very different philosophies. My wife is a fantastic writer, but she doesn't write like that. And she feels very constrained by it. So we tried once to write an article together, and we decided that we better stay married. So we stopped. It's two very different styles.
That's interesting. It's always interesting to hear how academics can or cannot or do not collaborate. But I think back to what you were saying about how Yael, your wife, feels that the framework that you're advocating is constraining. I mean, I think what you're saying and what I understand frameworks to be about is that frameworks are both by their nature constraining and therefore enabling because they encourage you to work within certain bounds, and that can, in a sense, be freeing.
And how does that relate to the general reception of your book? Do you find that some people find it really useful and others don't, beyond your wife?
Yeah. I've done over the years. I started doing this in the early 80s. I had a friend who was in graduate school. We came to graduate school together, and 6 years after I finished, he was complaining that he can't complete his dissertation. We started talking, and he started asking me questions. And turned out that within a month or two, he completed his dissertation. So I thought that, I have something to offer. And since I was the director of the graduate program, this was at Columbia, and then at Stony Brook and Rutgers, I started offering workshops, also in meetings of the American Sociological Association, and when I was invited for interviews in different departments. So I gave workshops on that. And in every workshop, there were at least a couple of people who were not convinced or said that they tried it and it's not for them and so on. So I'm aware of that. Actually, the Clockwork Muse is not written as a how-to book. It's written as a collection. It's a general approach and a collection of insights that I've had about writing, working systematically, that is more pointing to the parameters of the writing that you should be interested in exploring. For example, what's the pace of? I just got 3 days ago from Hong Kong a scholar who wrote to me that she read the book and she was very impressed by it and so on. But one thing she doesn't understand is, how do I know in the first draft how long a particular section would be? Because later this comes in when I move from draft 1 to draft 2, draft 3, draft 4. I'm talking about pacing yourself. And one of the elements is duration, how long each passage would be. So it's not passages like paragraphs, but sections and subsections. So this is the kind of, it's not how to in the sense of having a recipe of how to cook something, but what kind of things should you have in your kitchen before you start baking something, for example. So you said that one of the takeaways that you got from the book is to find the right time for you to work in. Yes, absolutely. I'm more a morning person, so my A-time research and writing is done in the mornings. When I was a graduate student, I was a night person. I used to work until 4 or 5 in the morning. So it depends on lifestyle also, the question is, do you have kids? What about the partner that you're with? Are you synchronized or not? So the point is, I think it's very important for writers to also know something about how the writing fits into the context of their life, and also to avoid burnout.
Yeah. So in your book, you talk about having a set of plastic shelves or drawers where you put notes in. And that made me wonder, your book came out in 1999 and I guess was based on how you did things in the 80s and the 90s. But I'm
And do
wondering,
them to this day.
you still use the drawers?
Yeah, the computer entered in 84 in my life. I would start using it for word processing. And actually, I found that my writing became much slower than it was before, because it was kind of endless way of correcting and correcting. So I'm not digital in that sense at all. I'm very old-fashioned in the way that I stick. So the drawers, I still have them, and I work with them. And I think of them as kind of places where ideas belong. So when I read something, I get an idea. When I did an interview of someone, I get ideas. I write those ideas and put them in the proper drawers.
In the book, you talk about rituals that
Yes.
you do to close a particular draft or section or chapter
Or session.
or a session. Okay, so can you tell us about some of those rituals?
Yes. They said, okay, how do you start a session? And people talked about getting coffee or tea and going to the bathroom and finding the best angle to put the chair and sharpening pencils and so on. So I call these opening ceremonies that you need to go ritually through them in order to get into the writing. But what becomes very important for me is how to prepare. You know, if you have only 2.5 hours session in a particular day, if you start with all these rituals, you may have only 2 hours and not 2.5 hours. So I start to prepare for the next session when I'm done with my earlier session. So this is part of the B and C writing. That it's not a writing, my head is cloudy, I can't come up with any creative idea, but I can still process what I need to do for tomorrow. So I have a large board where I can put ideas that are going to be written about the next session and try to order them sequentially. What nurses very often do for surgeons or for dentists, they prepare all the stuff so when the surgeon arrives, he or she can just start the operation. One friend, for example, who is a fantastic scholar, but was very disappointed by her own writing. And I remember asking her, how do you start a session? And she described something, and I'm saying, that invites this kind of endless, you know, like you turn your wheels, you are stuck in a mud, and you are going like this in circles, and it's the end of the session suddenly. I'm saying, don't read what you did the last time. After the last time, write notes that you put in the right drawers that wait for them for the next draft.
Yeah, that part didn't work for me because I feel like if I already think of something that I'm going to change about my current draft, I want to do it right away because
Yeah.
I have it fresh in my mind. If I put it in the drawer, I mean my metaphorical drawer, then I might not remember exactly how I was thinking about it. And as you say in the book, writing is thinking, and
Right.
the process of writing out that idea is going to be helpful for me in the moment. So yes, I understand and appreciate that idea of not starting each session going back to the paragraph you just wrote yesterday, but I also feel like if I think of something, I'm going to want to put it in right away.
Yeah, well, I have the temptations that you're talking about. Sometimes that I'll do it. I think it's important to come out from the session fulfilled. Actually, one of the writers that I read about talked about like the 400 word methods to actually stop a session in the middle of a sentence so that you really get hungry for starting it the next time. But what I do when I take notes for the next time that I'll write that passage, I write very detailed notes. So what you're afraid that you won't remember where you were, I try to capture as much as I can of why I'm excited about this idea at that moment. And sometimes when I get in the next draft to that part, I realize that I actually wrote 3 or 4 times notes on the same thing, and it's almost the same. So what? So I wrote it 3 or 4 times, but for the one time that I wrote it a little differently, that's what you would need to overcome the temptation to taste it again.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
But I write enough notes to create a bridge between me today and me a year from now when I get to it the next draft.
Right, that makes a lot of sense.
And your last sentence just got me thinking that you have a whole other book in you on that, the self today versus the self tomorrow.
Actually, for the book that I'm working on now, it's called Small Steps, Giant Leaps. I started it 5 years ago. And then one day when I was teaching sociological theory, I got excited about something that has to do with personalness and impersonality. I told my wife, and she said, so why aren't you going to work on it now? I said, because I'm in the middle of this one. And she said, this was related to my Parkinson's. She said, you know how you are now, you don't know how you will be in 3 or 4 years. So why don't you work now on the new thing that is fresh in your mind and you're excited about, and then return to something that is already half baked. And I did it, and I wrote this book. She was right then. 4 years later, I can tell you that I'm not as sharp as I was cognitively, as I was 3-4 years ago. I'm very glad that I had to start working now on this from the third draft and not from the first draft.
Yeah, well, we're wishing you the best for your health and your
Thank you.
continued productivity and contributions to the scholarly world. Thank you so much for coming, Eviatar Zerubavel.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
The Peer Review podcast is produced and hosted by Sarah Bunin-Benor and Mira Sukharov. Talia Ehrenberg is assistant producer and editor. The music is written and performed by the Galactic Ambassadors. Support for this podcast comes from a faculty grant from Hebrew Union College. If you would like to sponsor an episode, you can reach us at peerreview@huc.edu. You can join the conversation on Facebook at Peer Review, Cultivating Creativity and Fulfillment in Academia. Thank you for listening.